I've learned through the grapevine that apparently some fairly high-ranking members of the university administration actually watch these live streams. So I want to start this by saying, if you are a high-ranking member of the university administration and you're watching this live stream, to check up on me or to monitor me or to learn what my plans are. Well, first of all, I want to welcome you to my live stream. I think that's very interesting that apparently some of you watch this. And I want you to know that everything we're going through now, it's not personal. I understand why you're doing what you're doing. I understand that you're mostly just following orders and you're doing what you have to do. You might have family, you might have kids, you might have bills to pay. I understand all of these things. And you got to do what you got to do. You have a job to carry out. And I completely understand that. I completely respect that. You have a nature and I have a nature. And it is my destiny to do what I am doing, and it is your destiny to be a bureaucrat and enforce rules on people like me. So I don't blame you for that. I completely understand. And I genuinely wish you the best. I wish you a Merry Christmas, especially. But, this is me speaking to, I don't know what you want to call it. I guess you can call it the public, or, the small, tiny little slice of the public that checks in to listen to what I think or whatever. This is me just sharing what I think with and what's going on from my perspective, how I see it, with the public. So if I say things that are, a bit hurtful to you, I mean, I'm not trying to hurt you. I want you to know that. I received a notification from my employer, from, let's say, an unnamed office of my employer. And it now is clear that I think the university is seeking to, or the university would like to have me leave the university in one way or another. I think their intentions are clear now, based on this recent communication that I've received. Basically, the communication is that after this long investigation, because remember, the past few months, there's just been an ongoing investigation, basically, into a few things I've said or done on the internet, basically. I guess, yeah, I might give you a quick recap for those of you who maybe are tuning in for the first time. Basically, some students got upset with me for some things I said on Twitter. Like I used the word retard once or twice. I didn't call any one specific a retard. I just, I periodically use the word retard to describe like stupid, bad people. And I'm at peace with that. And I just don't think it's that bad. I think it's fine. That was basically the thing that triggered it. There was an investigation because of those student complaints. And then basically the investigation went and found a bunch of other like crazy things I've said or done on the internet. And then they compiled all of that. And I had a few meetings with an investigator, and they tried to basically ask me questions and try to get an understanding of what was going on with all the stuff I've been doing and saying on the internet. And I guess, the idea was to see if there was, see if there were rules broken, to see if what I had said or done over the years, because some of it went back quite far, to see if it, was consistent with my continued employment at this esteemed institution. And so after I had some investigation meetings, and after those investigation meetings, judgment was made that there needs to be a hearing. They could have concluded, for instance, that there was the information and the evidence didn't warrant an investigation. They could have concluded that nothing to see here and just dropped it all. Or they could have, and then they could have they could have proposed different types of hearings, basically. And some of those hearings might have suggested a slap on the wrist. Some of those hearings would suggest a more serious posture, seeking, for instance, to probably dismiss or something like that, to remove me from the post. And so I don't know for sure what their intentions are, or what exactly is going on. But what I'm saying is that it now seems clear to me, based on this hearing that I've been assigned to, that as far as I can tell, it looks like the university will be trying to dismiss me. Basically, is what they want. It seems. So that's one bit of news that I didn't know. I didn't know up until now. All of this time up until now, it's just been investigatory. But now it's clear there's going to be a hearing, and the outcome of that hearing, if I was found, quote unquote guilty, although I don't think I really use that language. If I was found guilty, I could be dismissed, probably, I think. And if I'm, but I also could be found not guilty or whatever, and they could, they could just throw it out. It is supposed to be a impartial kind of trial, and I'm allowed to submit evidence and witnesses and all of that. And so they want that to take place in around the middle of January. And so that's one bit of news, basically. I haven't shared this with anyone yet. This is the first time I'm putting this out there in public. I recently dropped a newsletter where I shared a little bit of this and a little bit of my angle on it, how I'm seeing it. But this is the first time I'm starting to kind of give you some specific details about what's going on. And so, right. So that's kind of the news. And now I'd like to tell you a little bit about just how I see it and what I'm thinking. And yeah, just to kind of get my own thoughts out. And, some people have kind of told me, it's not wise to say all of this stuff on the internet, because then, the administration might watch this or hear this, and then they know what your strategy is. And if they know what your strategy is, then, they can intelligently defeat you or something like that. And that's very true and wise advice. But the whole thing that I'm doing, like my whole kind of operating philosophy in life, that this whole kind of fiasco is really all about, is that I've basically given up the idea of like strategic self advancement in this kind of like dissimulated way. I'm not saying I'm above, advancing my own life and my own interests or something like that. I'm not pretending to be pure or something like that. But all I'm saying is that this kind of professional strategic dissimulation that is the norm in, institutionalized life, where, you have this kind of public mask, and then you have secret strategic reflections and calculations about how to present yourself and how to hide the difference between your private and your public plans and thoughts. That whole lifestyle is precisely what I'm kind of categorically rejecting, or not even rejecting, because I'm not objecting to it. I'm not doing that anymore. That's basically what this is about. Like I stopped doing that kind of a long time ago, frankly. It just only recently has caught up with the people who employ me, really. And once that caught up with them, they're making the judgments and decisions that they need to make, and that's all good. But my point is that I'm not going to, just because I'm like starting to get in trouble for the way I'm choosing to conduct myself, because that's the way that I believe in conducting myself. I'm not going to, for that reason, like start backtracking and acting like the kind of fearful, dissimulating, fake, like professional bureaucrat type of person that I'm precisely no longer willing to be. So what I realized was that if I act all guarded and I'm kind of very strategic and calculating about what I share or what I don't share in order to kind of protect my interests in this conflict negotiation process that I'm now embroiled in, that I have no interest in that, is basically all I'm saying. And in fact, that if I were to start kind of playing that strategic dissimulation game that all professionals play, I would be precisely shooting in the foot everything that I actually really have kind of discovered and built over the past 6 months, 1 year, almost 2 years now since I've really kind of gone down this line of flight, if you will. Yeah, so in other words, all I'm really getting at is where I'm at with my life philosophy and my strategy and in pursuing a kind of radical, independent, creative, and intellectual life. I'm way past the point of no return. And because of that, I have nothing to lose by just sharing with you everything I want to share, everything I can share that's interesting or useful to share. And yeah, so that's what I'm doing. So I don't care if if my bosses are watching this. I don't care. I'm happy to share with them what I'm thinking. I'm happy. I'm happy for you to understand really what I think and what I feel and why I'm doing what I'm doing. If it gives you a leg up in how this proceeds, I don't really care, because here's the thing: the university doesn't have anything to give me really, and it doesn't have anything to take away from me. Everything that I want, I already have. And the things that I want are things that institutions can't take away. So that's precisely why I'm doing everything I'm doing. I mean, I'm not stupid. I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing if that wasn't the case. So, okay. So that's a little bit of a little bit of context. So some people in the chat are asking, what's my plan? What's plan B for me if the war should come? Someone's asking, splitting off from academia and living off Patreon seems like a big risk. Yeah, no, I would not. That would not be the plan. I'm definitely not kind of betting my future on these highly unpredictable internet income streams. It's definitely emboldening. I mean, it's definitely a part of everything that I'm thinking about, no doubt. I mean, because it is a game changer now that there is a growing culture of just independent intellectual people doing stuff on the internet and people who like it just giving them money directly. I mean, it's definitely a game changer, and it's definitely a part of my larger calculations, no doubt. But I would never be so dumb as to risk like my entire life and my family's, life on that. I love all of the internet stuff that I've been doing, and even the little bit of money I get from people who watch and like and read my stuff means the world to me. And I'm definitely going to try to keep increasing that for sure, which is why I'm building up all of my projects and making them even better, making all the platforms kind of even smoother and better, and trying to increase the quality and volume of all the stuff I'm putting out. Yeah, so I definitely plan to grow all of that for sure. And that's going to remain, I think, a major part of my life. Perhaps even the main kind of interest and focus of my autonomous intellectual creative energy is just going to be, from now on, it's going to be just on the internet, no doubt. And so I'm looking forward to definitely building that out, and I'm really interested in and intrigued by what I could achieve by basically saving so much time and energy by no longer playing any of the bureaucratic institutional bullshit games, because I cannot tell you how much time and energy is wasted on just completely meaningless signaling and applications and asking for permission of different kinds. Yeah, hey folks, hey Jacob, hey people. Sorry, the other stream, it was broken. I have no idea what was wrong with it. I had to set up this new one. So you haven't missed too much. I've been kind of slowly settling into my voice this evening because these are difficult topics, and I am trying to choose my words carefully. I'm at a very kind of momentous moment in my life, so I'm trying to give it the due respect that it deserves, which is a fancy way of saying I've been kind of talking slowly and beating around the bush a little bit, so you haven't missed too much. For those of you who are just joining, the long and short of it is that it looks like my university wants to dismiss me, and that's what they're going to try to do, is what it looks like. And I'm just talking about my response to that and how I'm thinking about that. And so, no, I'm not going to go to sex work as a solution for this. No, I assure you. Right. So people are asking me, like, what is my plan B? What's next? It seems a little risky to just try to live off of internet money or something. And that's absolutely right. I totally agree. I'm not naive about that at all. However, I'm definitely convinced personally that for the rest of my life, very likely, the lion's share of my personal intellectual capacity will be dedicated to autonomous creative work put directly onto the internet. And yeah, as I was saying, I'm hopeful and confident that, my audience will just keep growing, and that will be really exciting and cool. And if only a small number of people are happy to throw me a little bit of money, then that could definitely be a that would definitely be the ideal and most amazing kind of outcome. But I'm not going to bet the farm on that. I'm going to also just build other income streams. But what's really good about this ultimately, I think, and why I think this is ultimately going to be a blessing, however it works out, is that in academia nowadays, you spend so much time wasted basically on applying for things, asking for permission, for doing all types of non-intellectual work. So basically, I'm just going to ultimately, I don't know how this is going to work out. I don't know if it's going to be me being fired or me resigning, or maybe they're going to, maybe we'll come to some sort of negotiated settlement. All of these things are possible. Um, and we'll just have to see how that plays out. But it doesn't really matter to me. Like, the point is, I'm I'm probably, well, I'm pretty certain actually that I'm going to be done with academia, and I'm very happy about that. However it plays out, it doesn't really matter. So, got another little super chat from my buddy Jacob here. Happy Christmas, and may the new year bring you many blessings. The creative risks you are taking are inspiring. Oh, well, thank you. Thank you very much, Jacob. Chamomile TV. Appreciate that. Appreciate that very much. Yeah, and so I'm I'm pretty confident that no matter how this works out, it's a good thing. For me anyway. I mean, I think it's a really bad thing for academia. I mean, not to sound cocky or anything, but I mean, I genuinely feel bad for academia. I feel bad for the University of Southampton, because I mean, I'm a pretty inane force, I think. I mean, if the university can't make a little bit of room for my relatively innocent weirdness, the university is in bad shape, man. And I really have a hard time seeing how the university is going to course correct from this increasingly self-destructive spiral of sensitivity to kind of public political demands. So, yeah, I mean, I will be an interesting case. I don't know how many people even know about my case or whatever, or how many people will find out about it in the future or whatever. But whether it becomes widely known or not widely known, it's definitely significant. I think my case is very significant, kind of in the recent history of university, political scandals, because I really kind of show how low is the bar for basically being kind of ousted. Like, because my offenses, what's interesting about my offenses is they're not really kind of like culture war political offenses. Like, this is not, Jordan Peterson having some big uh, conflict around whether he's willing to use gender pronouns. Like, this is not that. This is basically, I'm a kind of weird person who has a, how should I put this, potty mouth a little bit, and I have weird kind of creative needs to be quite zany all the time, and I have, interesting. I have not, how should I say this? Guess a just a statistically kind of uncommon or rare or weird kind of predilection for just like the the zany and the weird and like low status internet creative stuff. I don't know how to put it exactly. Whatever, you can put it in your own words. But the point is, like, I never actually did anything that was that bad. I did like, so what's interesting is when they sent me this information that there's going to be a big hearing basically, with an outcome of possible dismissal, they no, I'm not a postmodernist. We'll talk more about this, but to finish my thought, when they sent me this information that there would be a hearing, they sent me all of the quote unquote evidence of my wrongdoing or whatever. And it's this like massive dossier of just copy pasta, really. Like they just kind of copy and pasted all these tweets of mine and YouTube videos, and it's really quite funny, to be honest. I mean, what part of me really wants to do is just write a book about this whole process, because I think it would be really funny. Like these people have basically compiled some of my best work on the internet, like some of the coolest, funniest stuff I've done. They put it into a big PDF file for me. Part of me kind of wants to take the evidence file that they kind of submitted to this hearing tribunal thing. Part of me just wants to print it as a book, print it as a paperback book, and add like a preface and stuff. And because it's kind of like, selected works of Justin Murphy. But a lot of it is like weird stuff, stuff that I didn't even think they were bringing into the investigation. And it's quite funny because because they're like old people in suits, like trying to figure out what are these like internet people doing or talking about. And so it's pretty funny, like the way that they try to kind of describe and understand the evidence that they're like accumulating for this hearing. It's very funny. So I will actually think honestly about sharing that information, because again, if I'm comfortable leaving the university through whatever decision that comes to, I mean, there's nothing really. The thing is, I don't really have any incentives for good behavior right now. They haven't given me any incentives because it looks like they're just going to try to push me out. And if I'm comfortable with going, then there's no reason for me to not, share with you. I could give you the documents. I could, whatever. So I'm thinking about that. I'm thinking about what to do with all of that. Real quick to respond to that in the chat, I'm not a postmodernist at all. I just am interested in unabashed, unapologetic weirdness. Like I reserve the right to make whatever I want or to say whatever I want. I mean, it's that simple. I get that kind of conflicts with being a very serious and prim and proper professional. That's fine, whatever. But it's not about like it's not about like pastiche or like postmodern kitsch or something like that. I don't do that. But I just have a wide, how should I put it? A wide latitude in just experimentation. The difference between my mode of kind of high variance experimentation and postmodern pastiche, or whatever the trope is, the difference is that postmodernism just throws spaghetti at the wall and calls that like art or valuable cultural product. And I don't do that. What I do is I throw spaghetti at the wall, and then I'm very exacting and scientific and reflective, very rigorous, which is to say, non-postmodern, about selecting. I'm a harsh. I exercise harsh selection effects on my own high variance creativity. So on the one hand, my philosophy is be wild, be stupid, whatever, be silly if you want to, fuck around, like put stuff out there, even if it's shit, who cares? But always be actively and harshly kind of culling your output and separating the wheat from the chaff. And so, yeah, that's how I would say I'm not at all a postmodernist in that regard, even though I do support kind of really unrestrained, high variance, creative output or whatever. Ashwin says that meme culture has more creative vitality than just about any other art form these days, precisely because it is not burdened by any pretensions whatsoever. I think there's truth to that. And also with meme culture, certain things get selected and certain things don't. So a large volume of stuff gets put out every day, but most of that stuff falls into oblivion. Only the stuff that has like some sort of selective value gets lifted and goes viral or whatever. So yeah, there's definitely something there. So right. So what else? Just a few other things I wanted to share with you all. Yeah. So I was thinking like I have very few incentives to behave well now, because if I'm pretty much happy to leave, then I see no reason why I can't. I could start right now telling the whole world about all of the deep dark secrets I might have about, the University of Southampton. I could even start using proper names if I wanted to. I mean, there's no reason not to. If they want to dismiss me, then um, there's really nothing to lose, and there's a lot to gain through, really laying it all out there. If only comedy. I mean, like it's really funny. Like if you read the dossier of evidence against me, it is really, there's some really choice bits. Um, the other thing I was thinking is like uh, they might very well try to offer me money to keep my mouth shut, baby, maybe. Um, and that's something that the union wants to look into. And I'm sort of like, I don't think they could pay me enough, to be honest, to make that worthwhile for me. Because so this is kind of interesting, actually. Like, think about this. So the union was telling me that basically the amount that they usually offer for these sorts of settlements is like 6 months pay, usually. And maybe in exceptional cases they do a little bit more, but that's kind of usually the offer. So the way they usually negotiate these things is, they might say to me, "We'll give you 6 months pay, and you will leave. You'll resign, and you'll also sign an agreement saying that in the future you will never, speak ill of the University of Southampton or whatever." That could be put on the table. And so what's interesting is, like, I was thinking about it, and it's like 6 months pay. I mean, that would definitely make life a little smoother in the transition. But I mean, I'm very well qualified for many high paying jobs. Like, I'll be fine. I'm really not worried about that. And having to not being allowed to talk about any of this, for me, that's quite a high price to pay. Like, I'm not sure I would take that kind of offer. Like, I don't know if they could pay me enough to take that offer. And then I started thinking, I was like, I could actually write a book about this whole fiasco because it is so interesting and it's pretty hilarious. And also, I've learned so much. I've learned so much in this process about how institutions function, and also how to win, because that's why I kind of cheekily labeled this live stream "How to Pwn Academia," because people can say whatever they want, but as far as I can tell, I'm winning. Like, I've been winning this conflict, I think, from the beginning, because I basically decided quite a while ago, I think, that I would sooner or later start looking to leave academia anyway. And, I'm increasingly convinced that academia is more of a cost than a benefit for people who want to do intellectual work, given that, like, I mean, like, literally a majority of the actual work that I do for money within the university is non-intellectual, non-reading, non-writing. It's like bureaucratic and teaching and different types of tasks like that. Not that teaching is necessarily anti-intellectual or non-intellectual, but a lot of the teaching work is, it's basically bureaucratic work. And so, yeah, I mean, I kind of see this whole fiasco. I mean, I didn't try to make this happen. Like, I didn't plan this from the beginning as like, an orchestrated affair where I would say some really provocative things on the internet, and I knew the word retard would trigger some students, and then they would tell on me, and then I would do this. Like, it wasn't at all a plan like that. I was not expecting my use of the word retard to be the straw that broke the camel's back. However, um, I definitely was prepared for this. I mean, anyone who's been watching the news over the past couple months, really, past couple years, really, actually, knows that obviously the university is an increasingly fraught political place, and also that, if you look closely, institutions make very repeated, predictable, kind of stupid calculations. Like, they're completely incapable of being reasonable, because they're these big, sclerotic, ancient kind of machineries, and so they're really quite predictable. And while I didn't plan this out in the details at all, I definitely have, from beginning around like 2 years ago, I definitely started somewhat consciously changing my attitudes and speech and behavior with a somewhat, how should I put it, a somewhat prepared state of mind. Like if you speak as like provocatively or just if you're just naturally as kind of like unpredictable and kind of weird or on the margins as I am in terms of my behavior and just personal temperament or whatever, you'd be really stupid if you weren't like vaguely preparing for the possibility of getting fired. Like I'm not an idiot. So yeah, in a lot of ways, like I've been taking a lot of notes about this stuff over the past couple years, and so when all this kicked off, basically, I had pretty strong intuitions about what were the empirical mechanisms like defining the political conflict. And everything I've done about what I've chosen to say and not say or whatever, and how I've played it so far, I it seems to have brought nothing but good things, to be honest. Like this whole affair, this whole episode has brought nothing but positive effects to me. I'm happier, I'm healthier, I'm like my wife and I are happier, and we're actually more confident in the future now than we were in the past 5 years when I was like working this job, which is crazy, but it just shows how deeply and truly like this job, academia, just is not really for me. And so yeah, and then my internet stuff, like the YouTube and the blog and stuff, like it's all. I don't want to brag or anything, but it's kind of blowing up. Like on every blog post, I get new readers and people. A lot of people reach out to me. I get emails from people and stuff like that. And so my intellectual work, just my creative effort to kind of try to figure things out and say what I think and write out my ideas and describe things effectively and all of that, like just my weird ensemble of personal intellectual interests and energies. Um, it's running at full throttle and it's awesome. And I'm making so much progress on what I'm actually trying to figure out and getting my ideas on paper and analyzing data and talking with awesome people on, the podcast and the live stream and stuff. Like this whole kind of fiasco with academia has just basically energized me to work on all of that stuff more and more, and it's succeeding. And so I couldn't be happier. I could not be more confident in the future of my long-term intellectual achievements and output. Because you know what, like there is a risk of going rogue on the internet that you know all of my work will just kind of get lost to the millions of other independent, people on the internet. Whereas academia, some people believe there is this idea that in academia, well, if you have this kind of prestige stamp and you're an academic and you publish in Oxford University Press books and this sort of stuff, and that therefore that's going to increase your probability of being remembered and having that kind of long-term impact. And from the inside, man, it just does not. I do not think that is the case at all. I really, really do not think that is the case. Maybe if you're a Steven Pinker type of person, maybe that's true. But for someone like me, or maybe even like the average, like relatively high IQ, not super genius, but relatively smart, whatever, disciplined, capable intellectual such as myself, um, academia is not at all going to guarantee any type of long-term impact, in large part because of what I said before, which is that so much of the actual fucking job is distractions and time wasting. So in the past 5 years as an academic, I progressively became increasingly convinced that if I stayed in academia for the rest of my life, there's like a 99% chance my work would never have a long-term impact, that it would never really make a splash on the public culture. No matter how good an academic I was, or no matter how many Oxford University Press books I wrote, like, there are lots of very successful academics who will never make any impact, who, their work will never resonate with people, or affect the culture or anything in any way whatsoever. And it was pretty clear to me that had I stayed in academia, see, I'm slipping already into the past tense. You see, it's interesting. That I would be, a mediocre academic. Like I'm a good academic. I'm an internationally competitive political scientist, I would say. Like I could get jobs at other universities, and I was succeeding. But in terms of long-term impact, I would only ever be a mediocre academic, I think. And so, yeah, now I have an opportunity to at least try a different game. And so far, over the past like 2 years or so since I started, kind of really like shifting a lot of my energy towards creative production on the internet. Every every passing month, I get into my groove a little bit more, and it seems to just get better and better. In terms of quantity, I'm writing way more and I'm producing way more. I'm making much more progress on the all the thoughts and hypotheses that have been bubbling in my head over the past several years. Like I'm making major strides in actually actualizing them and putting them out there and getting work done. Like I'm just getting more work done by going straight onto the internet with all of my shit than I have in academia, per unit of time, per month or whatever. And so it feels completely right. I mean, it feels like this is the absolute best way to go. And so I'm just rolling with it basically. Yeah, and so like obviously your chances of making a long-term impact as an intellectual, like your chances of that glory that people aspire to, of you know being read in 100 years, 200 years, your probability of achieving that is always very low. Like no matter how good you are, it's just the numbers, right? The sheer statistics of it. Um, so if your sense is that you're not going to thrive in an institution such as academia, then you have nothing to lose but to try your luck on the outside. To head to the digital frontier, as it were, and try your luck on the frontier. And that's what I'm doing, and it feels absolutely correct. And so, yeah, if in 20 years I'm poor and broke and lonely, and my kids wonder why their dad is a poor, depressed alcoholic who used to have a good job as an academic, at the very least, if that happens, and I don't think it's going to happen, but in the worst case scenario, if that is in the cards, at the very least, they'll be able to see me here on YouTube in December 2018 while I'm 32 years old, at the very least, saying frankly and honestly what I'm feeling and why I'm doing what I'm doing. And that's all you can really do is lay it out there and hope for the best. So even if this goes ugly, you know, I I'm confident, or at least I'm at peace with myself, that I'm doing it all for the right reasons. And this is a calculated risk that I think is worth. I think it is the optimal decision for me, given my strengths and my weaknesses. And yeah. So in other words, what I'm kind of getting at is I don't think I even really want to fight the charges or whatever. If the university is seeking to dismiss me, if that's what they would like to have happen at the end of this hearing, um, that's fine. I mean, I'm not even that interested in resisting. Like, I don't want to mount a case. I don't want to defend myself. I'm not here to defend myself. If they don't like what I'm doing, then they can, you know, I'll allow them to enjoy their university in peace, and I'll go carry on what I'm doing elsewhere. Now, what's an interesting question is if they propose a settlement to me. If they say, okay, we'll give you 6 months pay if you agree to leave and keep your mouth shut. Here's the interesting question, and I'd be interested to have some input, maybe, if you have any thoughts. The question is, should I take it? Because one of the things I was thinking about was, I think I actually could write a book about this whole episode, and I think it would be really, really fun to read, and people could get a lot out of it because I've learned so much about how the stuff works. Um, and I did some back of the napkin calculations, and so basically, what I calculated was that if I wrote a book, let's say I self-published it, so all of the money from the book went straight into my pocket. I wouldn't have to sell that many books to actually match the amount of money that they would offer me. Um, if I wrote a book and let's say I sold it for $15 a pop, like a printed paperback, if I self-published a printed paperback, basically, and what I would want to do is I would basically tell this whole story. I'd include all the funny, evidence, all the funny little like anecdotes from this whole ridiculous kind of like Kafka-esque episode that I've been on. So part of it would be this kind of like tragic comic, dark, like Kafka-esque component, and then part of it would be memoir, and then part of it would be kind of like a how-to guide of like how to pull in academia. Because as I said, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I'm winning, and I would basically like share all of these insights, and and I was thinking if I self-publish like a paperback book, I would only have to sell about 900 copies to equal what they would offer me. and if they were to offer me about 6 months pay. So I kind of did some back of the napkin calculations. And if they offered me 6 month pay to keep my mouth shut, um, yeah, I'd only have to sell about 900 books to match that. So in other words, that's kind of the point at which writing the book, I would actually make more money than keeping my mouth shut. But when I think about it even a little bit more, I don't need to match it. I don't need to make the same amount of money. If I could make even, 60% of what they were offering me, I'd much rather have the fun and freedom and the I get an intrinsic benefit. In other words, I get an intrinsic kind of personal payment by refusing to bite my tongue. Temperamentally, I derive a lot of hedonic utility from retaining that freedom. And another thing is, it's not like I would need to secure 900 pre-orders. I would only really need like, let's say a third of that to feel confident that it would win out in the long run. So basically, when you account for all of these things, if 900 copies would match the settlement they'd offer, but then you think, I don't actually need 900 for it to be worthwhile to me personally. And then you also realize I would only need like to secure like a third of that lower amount, let's say, to be confident that in the long run, I would reach 900 copies eventually. Then I get a ballpark of like, personally, my subjective estimate is like, if I could get 100 people to pre-order this self-published paperback book at $15 a pop, yeah, if I could get like even 100 pre-orders, without hesitation, I would tell the university to go fuck itself, and I would just write this book telling everything about what happened and kind of including like all of the juicy personal details and calling people out for their shit. And also kind of like, I would want to frame it as like How to Pwn Academia kind of book, because again, that's kind of what I think is unique about my case. Like, I'm not a hero. It's not like this. It's not especially compelling. Like it's not like I'm not like standing up for some like really highfalutin, super honorable, respectable ideal. Like, no, I like to use the word retard, and that's basically like what I'm going down for. It's not very like noble, and I've never pretended to be. I'm not trying to be. I represent something different, I think, without trying to necessarily. I represent kind of just the simple right to be weird and uncouth, really. I think that's kind of what's at stake in a larger sense if you step back and you look at my case. But as I said, I've done this all kind of very intelligently, and as far as I'm concerned, doing things the way that I've done them has at every turn produced positive effects on me and my life and even my future income. Like, the truth is, people like, this is something people have a hard time understanding if you don't like look at the things like the exchange rates and UK versus US academia and stuff like that. Like, I'm going to make more money by being fired. Like, whatever job I get next, there's like a 95% chance I'm going to make more money. So I'm like, this is not going to hurt my future earnings at all. It's probably going to help them, just because the exchange rate is really bad. The British pound like decreased a lot over the past year, and so I still pay like my student debt in US dollars and stuff like that. And the jobs that I'm qualified for in the private industry, like data analysis jobs, they pay way more than I'm currently making, basically. So I'm going to be just fine. And basically what it looks like, realistically, what's actually going to happen, you never know. And I'm realistic about, the different things that could happen. I'm on guard to things, but what probably is going to happen, if I had to bet, is I will find a source of income through some sort of like paid work, leveraging my professional data analysis skills. And I will do that for income, and I will dedicate the rest of my time to blogging and writing books and doing the live streams and the podcast that I'm doing. And in an ideal world, the blog and the podcast and all the stuff that I'm doing will grow steadily. And each month, a few new people will, become patrons or throw me a little bit of money or whatever. And I'll just build that up slowly. as it is already kind of growing. That will all that needs to do is continue basically at its current pace. And then I will just slowly over time, after I start making money through private industry or whatever, I will just slowly decrease the amount of hours I give to the paid work basically and increase the amount of hours I give to all of this stuff. So we don't have very expensive tastes. Like basically what I will probably seek to do in the long run is do like part-time remote work where I use my data analysis skills for money, like 20 hours a week or something like that. But hopefully, ideally, it's remunerated 20 hours a week, and then I do 20 or 30 hours a week on just going wild on exactly what I want to be doing, making the stuff I want to make and writing the stuff I want to write and writing books and stuff like that. And if it were to grow and I was able to kind of monetize all of that stuff in a way that it works for, my listeners and my audience and stuff like that, and kind of increases my income a little bit over time, especially because like if I were to, books, what's cool about books is like once they're out there, they'll kind of ideally, hopefully they'll be kind of evergreen content, that people will it from, once they're written, it'll be kind of a passive income. So that will kind of accumulate. I think it's very, very possible and reasonable even to imagine that this is basically how I can make things work out. And if I can do this, my life will be undeniably, absolutely better than it is now. So, and I think I don't think I'm being unreasonable to think that this is that I'm going to be able to figure this out. And yeah, so if I am right, in other words, if I am right, then I've really hacked the system really well, because honestly, a really bad alternative outcome, honestly, could have been that I stayed in academia for the rest of my life when that wasn't really the right thing to do. So what I'm getting at, people, is that by running your mouth a little bit in what seems like a reckless way, it actually can be a really wise life tactic, I think. This was only semi-conscious as I was doing it, but now that it's happening and everything seems to be working out really well, and I seem to be like happier and faster approaching an even better life in many different ways. I have this kind of deep set of insights or realizations that actually, like, I've kind of been hacking the system in a way that I don't think a lot of people are really on top of. And so, yeah, I would love to write that down. I would love to put that all into one book. And I think it would be really fun to do it in a way that kind of weaves it into this kind of tragicomic episode that I've been a part of. And yeah, so that's another thing I wanted to share in tonight's live stream. That's kind of one idea that my mind has kind of been constantly returning to. And yeah, so let me know if you have an input on that. Do you think that would be cool? Is that a book you would like to read? Do you have maybe a suggestion about a better way to frame it or something like that? Or, email me, please let me know if that's something you would like, or shoot me a DM on Twitter or whatever. Because I think that would be really fun. Like, because I'm still suspended and I'm kind of thinking, like, I could just right now start applying for jobs. But dude, seriously, there are so many data analysis jobs out there. Like, I'm pretty sure I could get one in a pinch, like within a couple weeks if I needed to. And I'm kind of thinking, instead of applying for jobs, which is kind of like the conservative, like careful thing to do, which maybe I should do. I'm kind of thinking, since I'm still suspended, part of me wants to just take like the next 30 days and just do like 2,500 words a day, bang out an outline, right? 2,500 words a day, and just bang out like a really fun little book, basically, about this whole fiasco while it's fresh in my memory, and kind of try to formalize like these insights and these intuitions I've been having. And yeah, so that's one idea I'm having. If that sounds interesting to you, definitely let me know. And that will be useful to hear. I don't know what exactly I'll do with that, but that's kind of my big pet idea that's kind of prime in my mind right now. So yeah, tell me if you'd be interested in that. What else? Let's see what people are saying. Sorry, I've been kind of ignoring the chat. Jacob says, don't take the settlement. He says, stay authentic. Don't compromise. You could easily crowdfund the amount they would pay you if you were hard up for cash. Yeah, that's what I think too. The thing is, though, that I feel pretty adamant that I don't want to play the victim. Like, I'm not a victim. I don't feel like a victim. As I said, I've been very aware of everything that I've been doing. And at each step, I've seen what's coming. and I've chosen at each point to say or do what I've chosen to say or do, with a fairly kind of, as I said, prepared expectation about how I'm playing it and what the outcomes would be. And so because of that, because I'm not a victim, unfortunately, it does seem like a lot of the like crowdfunding dynamics on the internet today. It's like victim phenomena are those that attract a lot of money, and so part of me is kind of like, since I'm not a victim and I'm not going to play the victim, part of me is like, people are, maybe, how should I put this? Part of me is a little hesitant about the whole crowdfunding approach because I don't want to do it in this kind of like victim mold. And in some sense, like, people just have a tendency to kind of pigeonhole you in that victim mold. Um, if you're like asking for money, so that's why I'm thinking about more positive ways of proceeding. Like, that's why I think it'd be really cool to write a book about this whole fiasco. That way it's like a positive, productive, forward moving, non-resentful, non-victim type of maneuver or project for proceeding through this strange episode. What other people saying? Who's your least favorite other member of the politics faculty? Well, to be perfectly honest, I'm very happy to report that everyone in the politics faculty I really quite like. In all academic departments, there's always a little bit of, people have a little bit of conflict or tension or whatever, but I have no ill to speak of regarding any of my personal colleagues in that politics department. So, and I'm not just being polite. I was always actually really happy with how nice everyone in the department was. Some really smart people, really cool people. So I have no beef there, to be honest. Someone asks, is there still a point in pursuing philosophy, similar fields of study, through universities? I don't know where it leads besides professorship, and you make that seem like a bureaucratic swamp prison. Well, it all depends what you're trying to do. And I've always said, I think for some people in academia, even the current state of academia is good for them. They seem to like it enough. It's probably better than it's certainly better than a lot of other jobs. It's not, I'd much rather be an academic than, working in the coal mines. So, so I appreciate that, a lot. But it's all about personality, I think. One of the things I've learned a lot about in the past couple of years is personality science. And man, it's really changed the way that I evaluate my life options and my own judgment of how I fit and don't fit into different parts of institutions, because we are different. Humans are different. We have different constitutions psychologically and behaviorally. We have different strengths and weaknesses, and they're relatively hard coded in our temperaments. And we know a lot about how we differ and how we don't differ. And by learning about my own personality structure, like my placement on the Big Five, for instance, and then reading a lot about the different the personality traits, the Big Five, but then also the Big 10 aspects of those Big Five, it's been hugely illuminating for me. And it's one of the major things that made me really start realizing, like about a year ago, that I really started to kind of understand, oh, wow, okay, I'm very different than all these other people in academia. And when I was able to kind of decode empirically how I'm different, it made a lot of sense to me. And so yeah, basically this is a long way of saying that there might still be, academia still might be attractive to some people. I think if what you want is job security, and you also have a naturally easy time with biting your tongue, then it's a relatively good job. Yeah, you have to be smart. You have to be, self-motivated. But if you're smart and you like to write stuff that kind of like how do I put it? Because I don't want to be dismissive. Look, like, lots of good work that is done in academia. No doubt. I'm not at all saying otherwise. But it's just that, yeah, you have to be comfortable with kind of institutional rules. That's all. And of course you do. I mean, that's not to belittle it in any way. It's just, if you're not good with institutional rules, then, or if you have a more expansive idea of kind of being a like radical, creative, public intellectual provocation. Like if you're interested in anything like that, academia is probably not going to be worth it. The sacrifices you would have to make to succeed would be too great for you for that to be worthwhile. But if you're just a really smart person and you like to write articles about complex topics and do research, and you're also really good at doing like a high volume of paperwork that you don't necessarily want to do because you're conscientious and you're willing to do that and you're really productive and focused, and you're able to do all that shit work and also then still have a lot of time and energy and willpower to do focused research work. I mean, if you're that type of person and you want income and job security, then yeah, it's like a pretty good way to go. If you want adventure, if you want provocation, if you want, if you have a low tolerance for doing boring kind of in meaningless like paperwork and stuff like that, if you have a low tolerance for like asking permission from people, if you have a low tolerance for waiting really long periods of time between putting in the work and then getting any amount of kind of like response or gratification from it, if you have really low tolerance for these things and you have a high need to be creative all the time, like I would not encourage you to pursue academia. But anyway, what else do we got? Deep Ryan says that maybe have another chat to Ben Boyce, even just privately. I'm sure you can both share insights as you go forward on your respective projects. Yeah, Ben Boyce is cool. I enjoyed talking with him. We're in plans for him to do the live stream on my channel, so he'll be joining us eventually. We haven't scheduled it yet, but we will. Made Fresh Halliday says, "How's it going, Justin? Love you." Who are you, may I ask? Are you a family member? I'm a little troubled to hear that you love me, unless you know me really well. You should not generally love people on the internet who you don't know. But if you know me, let me know. What else do we have? Do I have anything else in my notes? Anyone else have questions or comments or whatever? That if you're just joining, that's basically the TLDR of tonight's talk. Is basically, it looks like my university wants to fire me. Now, whether they're able to is another interesting question. It's not at all clear what the outcome of this hearing would be. As far as I'm concerned, I mean, I think they have a pretty weak claim. I mean, they just have this like long file of copy and pasted like tweets and stuff that I've said and done and YouTube videos and stuff. And yeah, like basically the case that they would make is negative reputational effects. They'll say that, yeah, you have academic freedom, but this is so bad for our reputation that therefore we have the right to fire you. It looks like that's the case that they would make. And I mean, yeah, I guess you can make that argument, but the only real reputational effects were like a few students and like one or two people from the public were upset and they submitted complaints. Of course, there were Daily Mail articles, but that came after the fiasco that the university basically kind of triggered or initiated. So I think it's not actually reputational effects. I would make the sincere argument that I've been very good for the reputation of the University of Southampton because, look, the University of Southampton is not that well known. A lot of you probably have never heard of the University of Southampton until you heard of me. And so therefore, you people who watch my live stream and you people who read my blog and like it, you all should count in the calculus as examples of positive reputational effects because, if you like my work, then you're like, oh, this University of Southampton is pretty cool. They got this Justin guy. But of course, in their investigation, they don't count any of you. They don't count any of you as positive reputational effect. So, it's obviously a little ludicrous. But here's the thing. When you get adjusted to academia, you realize all of the internal bureaucratic procedures for something like evaluating the reputational effects, of course, it's going to be ludicrous. Like none of these like internal procedures ever work. They're always like kind of hopelessly impractical and biased and misspecified and just unworkable. Now, here's an interesting additional thought. which a lot of people will say. People have already said it to me, and I've thought about it many times. People will say, you know, you might not like the oppressive institutional confines of academia and the norms of professionalism that contain your creative exuberance, Justin. However, when you find yourself in private industry after academia, you're also going to be oppressed by the institutional norms that are just as bad in, in the private sector. And of course, I understand that, in the private sector, there are also all kinds of stupid rules and bureaucratic procedures and nonsense and shit work and disingenuousness and whatever. Of course, there's going to be plenty of that in the private sector, maybe even a little bit more. I don't know. Haven't been there yet. However, here's the crucial thing that people don't understand. The major difference is that in the private sector, your fucking identity is not based on some pretension to being intellectually open-minded and radically intellectually incisive. That's what grates, I think. That's what makes academia so uniquely perverse and kind of hard to tolerate, is because the whole fucking gig, the culture, the identity, the whole shtick is that we fancy ourselves committed to intellectual pursuit. We fancy ourselves as different than private industry. And in some sense, we fancy ourselves as intellectually more honest and more interested in disinterested truth seeking. We think of ourselves as more disinterested. We think of ourselves as radically willing to follow the consequences of investigation, even where petty, biased, economic and governmental actors would not be willing to. You fancy yourself as smarter, really, and more honest and intelligent than the private sector or traditional corporate businesses. And that's what makes it so difficult to go along with, because that's why I got into academia. That's why I always aspired to academia, and why I worked so fucking hard to not only break into it, but to succeed in it and to build my career there, is because I drank that fucking Kool-Aid real bad. I thought that was what we were all doing. Obviously I learned pretty quickly, like a long time ago. It ain't so rosy, but the point is there's a unique kind of anguish that comes from occupying that identity and occupying that persona of being a kind of, prestigious truth seeker, knowing damn well that the entire culture is just filled with all kinds of ridiculous, whatever lies and like repressive, nonsensical norms and shit like that. So yeah, in other words, what I'm getting at is I'm totally prepared for there to be restrictive norms in the private sector. But at least I don't have any illusions about that. I'll do what I need to do. I'm not going to pretend that I'm like super fancy, prestigious intellectual. If I'm like working for some business or whatever, I'm just going to make money, and I'm going to make more money, and I'm going to find a way to over time decrease the amount of time I put to that and increase the amount of time that I keep investing in my autonomous intellectual work. So in other words, I'd rather separate my money-making function. I'd rather separate the hours of the week that this is all about optimizing the amount of money I'm able to bring to my family, and doing that to whatever degree I need to do that, and then carving out the times where I'm pursuing my disinterested intellectual and creative work, where I get to say and do whatever the fuck I want, and I no longer ask permission from anyone. I no longer apply for grants. I no longer wait for long, like incredibly long journal publication times, only to hear back from like idiot reviewers, like who are like have all kinds of just like kind of like ridiculous hangups or whatever. There's just none of that anymore. There doesn't need to be any of that anymore. And yeah, I think the time savings will be so great. The efficiency savings will be so great from basically brushing all of that aside, that I'll actually have a more genuine and effective intellectual life by biting the bullet and making money however I need to. And then, carving out the more radical intellectual life separately, instead of doing what academics do, which is they try to do it all in one. They try to be disinterested truth seekers and also like bureaucrat business people all in one. But that is what's really really terrible to live through and to put up with. And that's the charade that I'm just very very excited to no longer be a part of. Yeah. So I'll keep you posted on how this all unfolds. I'm still not sure exactly, but put it this way, in I would say there's like a 99% probability at this point that within 1 year I will have left my academic career. Let's put it that way. This person in the chat says that this is my mother. Oh, okay, you're kidding. No, it's MFD from Discord. All right, what's up, MFD? I haven't seen you in the Discord recently, but welcome back, to my world. So that reminds me, if you want to get into the Discord server, that is still up and running. So that's just where like me and people who are interested in the themes I'm interested in, that's one of the places where we hang out and talk about shit on a daily basis. So yep, Jacob says the Discord group is lit. I think the Discord group is there's a very good culture there. So if you're interested in any of the stuff I'm interested in, all you got to do is email me, or you could even reply to this video, I guess. Although YouTube makes it hard to communicate. So DM me on Twitter or send me an email, and I'll give you an invitation. So what else? I think maybe we should just wrap it up. Make sure you subscribe to this if you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Like the video, all that bullshit, and stay tuned. I'm gonna be updating you as I go. As I said, I don't think I have anything to lose anymore. So I'm not really gonna pull any punches. I'll just tell you what's going on as it's going on. And oh yeah, just a reminder, I would be really keen to hear from you all if you have any thoughts or suggestions or input on just navigating this kind of crazy transition. Oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you also, my wife and I are trying to have a baby also. So I wrote about this in my email newsletter that I just dropped a couple days ago. By the way, I've spruced up the email newsletter, so it's more like visually compelling, and also I'm kind of peppering it with good little clips from the stuff I'm reading and all that. So yeah, we've decided that we're trying to have a baby, and a lot of people think that that's kind of crazy because my life is very unpredictable right now. And aren't you supposed to have a secure income before you have a baby? That's what most people think. But no, we are basically, our view is that right now is a time of great change and great opportunity, and we just feel ready. And so yeah, basically the next year is going to be crazy for me, like totally crazy, assuming we're lucky and that works out. The next year or two, let's say, is going to be really crazy. And yeah, so I'll keep you posted. I'll let you know how things go. And yeah, I think that's all I have for you tonight. All right, so thanks for hanging out, everyone. As always, I'm going to take a few days off. Maybe I have some blog posts scheduled, so there'll be fresh content. But yeah, I'm gonna get those posts scheduled and then chill for a couple of days. Someone asks, do you think it would be any better in academia if your research was in a different area? Probably not. It would be better if I was a different type of person, but I ain't the right type of person for academia. Now, another way of saying that is, however, though, that I think the types of people that academia can tolerate is decreasing over time. Put it that way. I think 20 years ago, my type of person would be fine in academia, but you have to be, selection effects are increasing. I've talked about this in other talks that I've said this before. If you might have heard me say it, but I think the increasing efficiency of like digital capitalism is such that in all institutions, selection effects are increasing. So basically, like the type of person you can be and succeed in like a particular institutionalized mold, the latitude of that is just narrowing. And it just means that like academia used to be a place for misfits. I mean, it used to be a place where if you were smart and just wanted to be free and left alone to work on your weird ideas, academia is where you go. It's just not that anymore. It's just a different thing now. So now you have to be like a really productive and just an obedient kind of like bureaucratic um, research producer, basically. And I'm not hating on that. Not that that wasn't like a underhanded jab. It's just, and because there are people who do that well, and they also produce like really fascinating and valuable research. Of course, there are loads of people who do that and have a secure, stable income through academia, and they produce nothing of any interest to anyone. So yeah, but hey, I mean, they wouldn't be the only sector in which that happens. So whatever. The point is just that if you're a creative, radical intellectual, you might consider trying academia. But I think for like the put it this way, I think for the most interesting intellectuals of the present and the future, um, a decreasing proportion of them are going to be coming from the academy, and an increasing proportion of them will be kind of radical and like bizarre creative upstarts on the internet. At least I'm putting my money where my mouth is, because that is basically what I'm doing. Like I probably could walk all of this back and apologize and go through this hearing and mount a defense and bring witnesses and stuff, and like I could probably defend myself through this and keep my job, or at the very least I could definitely get a job at another university. Um, so I am putting my money where my mouth is. Like I have skin in the game now, as it were, because all this stuff I've been saying about how prestige hierarchies are kind of collapsing in their kind of social and political significance, and how you know all of the best opportunities I think for creative intellectuals are now live and totally open on the internet. I mean, I've been writing about this stuff and thinking this through and kind of theorizing this a lot over the past year. And you can interpret what's going on in my life right now as me basically just putting my money where my mouth is, and I'm now kind of staking my life on that perspective, I guess, in some sense. Hey, Adam. Adam says, "What's up, Justin? Really enjoyed the blog post about increasing economic returns to intelligence." Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. That's something I've been thinking a lot about. One thing that I want to do is I have lecture notes from my politics of the media course that I taught at the university, and that was really like a course on accelerationism, kind of like that. Or accelerationism was one big part of the angle that I taught that course with. So one of my projects over the next few months is I would like to clean up all those notes and either, I don't know, publish those as a book, or maybe make some sort of like courseware or something might be cool. Like it might be fun to play with one of these sites where you basically make an online course and basically give it to people, just put it up on the internet. Might do something like that. Or I might do both. I might compile it into a kind of book and do some sort of, and put the course online or something like that. There are just all of these things that I could do. So you see what I mean? Like this is all of the stuff that I've done over the past several years as an academic. I just have all of this content, all of this stuff. And I just kind of want to hit the ground running and just basically convert all of it to like what is the most intelligent, useful, effective way to convert this stuff into autonomous, freely available internet content, and just kind of churn that for the next year. And hopefully it'll find an audience, and you folks will appreciate it. And yeah, so that's what I think. That's the kind of stuff I'm thinking about. There's just so much to do, so much to possibly do. Minion Meme Mindset, that's a good name, says, "Thank you for answering. Agree with types issue. It seems younger profs are less charismatic, more bureaucratic types, more inclined to go along with admin stuff." Yeah, well, I mean, it's so competitive. Like there are so many more PhD students each year than there are job openings. So like if you want to get a job, you better be perfect on all of the dimensions that they really are selecting for. Like, yeah, bureaucracy and also intelligence, no doubt. I mean, to do all of the bullshit work, like to do all the stupid work and also publish well over a lifetime, you have to be really intelligent, no doubt. So again, I'm not saying like, oh, academics today are so stupid. That's not the case at all. They're definitely intelligent, but they also have to have traits that in some ways are orthogonal to their kind of maximal, honest, disinterested expression of their intelligence. I would maybe put it that way. All right, folks. Thanks for hanging out. As always, if you haven't already, please subscribe. Sign up to my email newsletter. That's probably the best way if you want to get updates and kind of know what's going on with all the shit. That's probably the best way. I'm kind of investing more in that as a way of kind of, it's because it's semi-private, it's semi-public. I find that to be like a useful way to kind of give the major updates in a really clear and concise way. Maybe before I'm willing to kind of like start tweeting about it, I'm more likely to kind of put it in the email newsletter or something like that, maybe. So yeah, do that if you haven't already. And yeah, if you want to get in on the Discord server, just shoot me a DM on Twitter or send me email. You can find my email online, easy. What else? Jacob, we'll pick this up in the Discord. I'm getting kind of tired. All right, folks. Thanks for hanging with me. Thanks for listening to my ridiculous stories. And I'll talk to you next time. After Christmas, I'll be back. Oh, I have some good podcast guests coming up, by the way. And also, I've been uploading the old live streams to the podcast. So just today, I posted RS Backer, and I posted my talk with Ben Sixsmith. Those are now on the podcast, so check them out. If you're not already subscribed to the podcast, go and find them. You just have to search for Other Life wherever you get your podcasts. And yeah, I'll be continuing to post the old backlog up to the audio format for the podcast. So if there were any of the old live streams you wanted to listen to that you didn't get a chance to, because it's hard to on YouTube, yeah, you'll get them on the podcast. There was something else I was going to say. Was there? Whatever. Yeah. So, oh yeah, I have some new guests coming up. That's what I was going to say. A little preview would be, I know Reza has confirmed, but we don't have a date yet. Jehu has confirmed, but we don't have a date yet. And I just actually heard back from, I don't think I've told you this yet, but I'm going to have Dominic Cummings. I'm going to do a talk with Dominic Cummings. He agreed to do one early in January. So I think I'm going to go meet him in London. If you don't know who that is, he was basically one of the masterminds behind the Brexit Leave campaign. Really smart guy, really kind of controversial guy. But the reason I was interested in him is because he actually has a blog, and he has some like pretty far out kind of theoretical ideas that I found on a blog randomly. I was like, this is interesting. Like, this guy's like a genuine intellectual. And so I messaged him, and I was like, I'm a political scientist. I would really like to talk with you. And yeah, he said he's game. So he's like pretty famous and influential in like British politics. But I don't know how many of you listening to this would know who he is or whatever, but he's confirmed. So hopefully that'll come through too. All right, everyone. Thank you very much once again. Oh, and before I forget, huge Merry Christmas to you all. I send you nothing but my best wishes to you and your family. Have a lovely and relaxing Christmas. Have a nice New Year, and I'll be back on the air in no time. Thank you all. Take it easy.